Welcome, everyone. This is the very first episode of the FireTruth Nerdcast. We're a new show to talk about all your nerdy things. We want to bring a new perspective, or more of a critical but constructive perspective to nerd culture that I feel we don't really see much of in the modern day of podcasts and YouTube and all of those sorts. I am one of your hosts, Nick Fire, and my co-host is none other than a man named MarcTheTruth. Would you like to introduce yourself, Mark?
Yeah, I'm MarcTheTruth. Like you said, there's so many podcasts out there that are just negative, and they don't give a reason why they don't like it. They don't really have all the facts. They just kind of say like, oh, this happened, so I don't like it because it contradicts that. But it's like, if you read and pay attention, that's not necessarily true. And there are some things that just don't add up. But that being said, like, we're going to bring that constructive criticism. So if something doesn't add up, we're going to explain what we think could be done to fix it, whether or not, no actual directors are going to listen to us. But it gives a different perspective to the fans of like, oh, I didn't think about it that way. Like, there's a few people that I've changed their minds just by talking to them about the show. So
that's what we hope to do, because there's been a lot of divisive conversation on our topic today, the Acolyte. We're going to be talking about the first 5 episodes. But before we do that, we'd like to introduce ourselves a little bit so you can get to know us and what we're all about. And where our names come from, because we have gimmick names. Mine, Nick Fire, is actually shortened by one of my nicknames from when I was a kid. I made a gamer tag for online gaming. And when I was 12, I thought the name Firefang just was immaculate. I thought it was the greatest thing, the most badass name anybody could possibly think of. I didn't think anybody could have a cooler name than me going into my first days of Halo 3 until harsh reality set in and I learned the cruel nature of the internet when I was first called Firefag. And ever since, I've hated the name. Absolutely regretted it. Regretted every single moment of my life with that name. So as I got older, though, I'm not really good with nicknames. I'm good at naming things for other people and for other things, but just not myself. So Firefang has been with me for so long, I might as well just go with Nick Fire. And such a basic hope that you guys like the name, and now I'll kick it over to Mark so he can explain his legendary name.
I wouldn't say it's legendary. So I think it was about middle school as well. No, more like freshman year of high school. I decided that I was going to try to be a rapper. And the only thing that I had social media wise was Instagram, or that I was going to make, because I didn't like Twitter. And I wasn't going to use Facebook because Facebook just had my regular actual Facebook. So I came up with the name MarcTheTruth. That was my rap name. I tweeted out, I called them truthisms. Tweeted out random things that like were inspirational quotes. I did make an album. It's somewhere out there on, what's it called? I don't know. It's somewhere out there. I think it's on YouTube, or I might have taken it down off YouTube, but it's out there somewhere. It was called The Beginning by MarcTheTruth. But yeah, that name's kind of just stuck, and it's been my Instagram name forever. Hasn't changed. It's my name on all my gamer tags. Pretty much all of my social media is now that. But yeah, I'm not a rapper anymore, in case anyone's curious. I don't think you are. I was not good. I had no flow. I had no enthusiasm with rapping. I thought I had some good lyrics and some good
you did
puns, but other than that, I made the one album and wrote a couple other things that were going to be songs, but that was it. I stopped. I tried. I stopped. But yeah, that's just the name that has stuck with everything now. So
I've known Mark since sophomore year of high school, and I can definitely attest to that. He did have some good lyrics.
Yeah, but there was I would be better as a ghostwriter for Drake.
Yeah.
But maybe not for Drake, but that's all he uses. So
maybe for Drake.
Yeah. But yeah, I could not rap myself, but I could write.
He could. The other thing that Mark has a special talent for is Star Wars. Knowledge of Star Wars. Star Wars is like one of his favorite things, maybe his favorite thing in the entire universe.
Besides,
I call him. Well, yeah, obviously. I like to call him a walking, talking Wikipedia. So we'll see where we go with there. But before we get into the topic still, we want to give a little background on this show, kind of set the scene for the production and behind the scenes aspects of the series. And let's get into it. So this is a new Disney Plus series. It's been in the works for a few years now. The director is Leslie Headland. She pitched The Acolyte, and it was greenlit by Kathleen Kennedy around 2020, 2021-ish. Went into production, so during COVID times. We don't want to remember those. There's a writer's room, which I thought was pretty cool, that they put together with multiple perspectives of Star Wars, so people who only like the original trilogy, the prequels, maybe even just the EU stuff, and even one person who isn't even a Star Wars fan, which I thought was pretty cool, that they would put somebody on there like that.
Yeah, that's the most interesting one to me, because you get the aspect of, like, the guy doesn't like Star Wars, or the girl doesn't like Star Wars, so, like, they get to ask the questions of, like, okay, well, for someone that doesn't know what that means, how are you going to explain that in the show, in an episode, so it's understood by someone that's never seen anything?
I think, too, it can bring a new perspective to the series, because a lot of people that work on it, I mean, Star Wars is such a massive franchise. I'm sure most people that work on it are fans of Star Wars and are very nostalgic for certain aspects of Star Wars. So I think having somebody in there who doesn't have any bias might actually help the production be the best it can be. But The Acolyte takes place towards the end of the High Republic era, around 100 years before the Phantom Menace and Anakin's birth. And Mark, I want you to give a little history on the High Republic era. What are the Jedi looking like, and what's the state of the universe right now in Star Wars?
So the Jedi at this time are basically just people of peace. There's nothing they're really fighting. There's no Sith that we know of. Their main really antagonist is considered space Vikings. And there's only been a few books, and then now the show, that we have to go off of. But yeah, it's a time of peace, so like the whole Jedi ideology that we see in like Clone Wars and all that doesn't exist. They're much more like, no, I'm not going to use my lightsaber. I'm going to talk to you. I'm just going to go here, do what I need to do. Like, you're going to know they're a Jedi, but they're not going to, willy-nilly whip their lightsaber out like we've seen in other things. They're much more, not laid back, they're much more reserved.
And I feel like they're kind of considered like superheroes at this time instead of, people being leery of the Jedi like they are in the prequel era.
Yeah, there's no sign of like discrepancies in their ideology. They don't have anyone that questions what they do at this time. Everyone's like, okay, they've kept the peace. Everything is great. There's no issues that we know of. There's nothing to be afraid of. They're basically like the Avengers of the time.
I know there's the books, which is what the High Republic era was launched in, have a completely separate story from this. This story, The Acolyte, kind of ties more into prequel era because it's so close before Phantom Menace. But maybe one day we'll talk about the books if you guys are interested in hearing about that. I do own Light of the Jedi, and I've read a little bit of it, but I haven't read all of it. So that is something I'd like to get into, because really my only experience with the High Republic outside of the show is the Light of the Jedi novel, the parts that I read, and Jedi Fallen Order, which kind of focuses a little bit on some characters from the High Republic era.
Yeah, I don't read, so if we're going to go that route and talk about books, you're going to have to give me like a year to read them.
Oh, it's an idea.
Yeah.
Anyways, let's get into our topic. Episode 1, Lost and Found. We're going to go through all 5 episodes, so don't worry about that. But episode 1 starts off with, I think, one of the best scenes in all of Star Wars, when the assassin, who we eventually learn is May, one of the twins, enters a bar on Ueda and kills Master Indara, but has one of the absolute best action scenes of all time. Master Indara is also played by Carrie-Anne Moss, who everybody will probably know as Trinity from The Matrix. And this scene was very Matrix, I thought.
Yes, I agree. Like, you could tell that they put Matrix-esque parts to the fight, but they did it in a way where it worked. Like, it made sense because, Jedis at this time don't use their lightsabers, and they made that work.
It's nice to see the Jedi finally using the Force. I feel like we didn't really see them use the Force that much throughout all live-action adaptations, only in, key moments. It's kind of cool to see Master Indara actually use the Force in, a martial arts style of combat.
Yeah, there's definitely more emphasis on the Force, because before, you'd see someone go to grab their lightsaber with the Force, or push someone a little bit, but there was a lot more of using it to slow things down, stop things.
Yeah.
It was done very well, and you see more of it throughout the show, but I'd like to see that adapted to more Star Wars live action or cartoon shows.
Needs to be, because I feel like the Force, out of all the things in Star Wars, I feel like the Force is probably the most underutilized aspect of the series.
Yeah.
Outside of video games, which usually go crazy with the Force.
Yeah.
But this scene was really good. The martial arts influence was amazing. The Matrix style action was amazing. Like I said, I think it's one of the best scenes in all of Star Wars. And in this scene, May, the assassin, ends up getting the better of Indara by distracting her and killing her. But one thing I noticed was that May didn't attack Indara first. She tried to bait Indara to attack her.
Yeah, she tried to induce the fight. She didn't want to be... Just like when, you tell a kid, if they throw the first punch, then you can fight them. If they don't do anything. It was kind of one of those things, she had that mindset of, all right, I'm not going to throw the first punch, but I want the fight to happen.
It kind of shows, she's trying to make the Jedi make the first move so she can blame them for what's going on.
Yeah, she can justify what she's about to do. And when she did win the fight, I'd like to point out she fell for the old dodgeball trick where you throw one up, and then as soon as they look up, you whip it at their face.
And the other guy's life was completely in danger.
Yeah.
The bartender, or whoever that guy was. But yeah, it was a great scene. It had me hooked right from the fucking start. I couldn't keep my eyes off the screen.
Yeah, there was no, most movies or shows, they have, kind of dialogue throughout the first few minutes of the show. This was just straight up, boom.
Was, as far as I can really think, maybe outside of Revenge of the Sith, it was probably the most action in the first 5 minutes of a Star Wars thing I've ever seen. Yeah. It was cool. It was really cool. It was really unique, and it was nice to see the Force used in a different way. I want to see more of that. The next part is when Osha Anasaia awakens on a Trade Federation freighter. She's a human mech working there, and Osha looks identical to this assassin. She also has her little droid Pip, which I thought was pretty cool.
Yes, that droid is awesome. And it's kind of like the, I don't remember his name, but the droid from Fallen Order. It just doesn't have the legs.
Now, at this point, I didn't even realize that Osha and May were different people.
No, I had no idea.
And especially they have, a scene where her coworker asks, where were you last night? Trying to imply that, she was out being the one killing the Jedi. But it's pretty cool.
Yeah, I think that was done very well, because it makes you there's no sign of there being twins.
The only sign is that May's hair is just a little longer than Osha's, but I kind of just figured it was a headdress.
Yeah, I just kind of figured, she had her hood on, and then when you see Osha for the first time, it's oh, okay, her hair was pushed up in the hood or whatever.
There was a pretty cool scene. I mean, it was cool to see the Trade Federation, too.
Yeah, obviously they've been around forever, but to see them and without, the Asian accents, they're just regular Trade Federation. But it's also, we don't get to really know what they're doing, but what are they doing at this point in time?
Yeah, I mean, they were working for Sidious, so before that, like, what were they doing? Just, I guess, just trade operations.
Yeah.
There was a cool scene, too, that I really enjoyed where OSHA is sitting and staring into the flames when she's out there, like, repairing the ship, and it's reminding her of the past, which is something we'll get into in episode 3, but looking into the fire and the symbolism behind it and her hearing her mother and all the others' screams was really good.
Yeah, but at that point, like, you don't know what it is that she's seeing.
Right.
You don't know that it's from, her... I mean, you can apply that it's from her past, but you don't know what she's seeing. It could have been something that she did. It could have been something she witnessed, or, the Trade Federation did at that point, because we don't know.
Yeah, at this point, we have absolutely no idea. After that, though, Jedi Knight Yord is who we're introduced to with his absolutely the most mysterious character in the entire show, in my opinion. The fucking Padawan with the big ears. We don't have a name, as far as I know.
I don't think so.
And we've yet to see her since this exact moment, which is biggest mystery of the entire series, I personally think.
Could she be the Sith?
Well, we know she's not now.
Well, yeah, at this point we know now, but...
Unless it's who the Sith is working for.
Yeah.
If they're working for anybody.
That'd be a major plot twist.
That'd be the greatest plot twist in history. So, Yord and his Padawan come to arrest OSHA and bring her back to Coruscant after suspecting that she's the assassin of Master Indara, simply because we find out through a little dialogue that OSHA's training was cut short as a Jedi because of Master Indara.
And we don't know what she did. As we learn as the show goes on, that, her past, she can't get over it, which is not the Jedi way. Like, you have to forgive and not necessarily forget, but you have to learn to deal with it and move on. And she wasn't able to do that, which then makes it even more of a reason to assume, because we don't know what happened, but that gives you more reason to assume that she is the one going after the Jedi that may or may not have done something.
And the next scene, though, is kind of what made me start to suspect that May and OSHA were different people, because we go to the prison ship that OSHA's on, and a riot breaks out. Everybody is freaking out, and OSHA tries to use the Force to grab her little droid Pip, but she can't.
Yeah. Which then...
So that was like the first sign that...
Yeah, because her training was cut short, so she's lost her way with the Force, because she's gone on to be a, basically a construction worker.
And possibly her pain from losing her family is what makes her weak in the Force.
Yeah, it blocks her ability.
They definitely make a point that she hasn't gotten over it, and that's a big reason why she's not a Jedi anymore.
And why she's a suspect.
So then we see, in my opinion, is the best character in this entire series. My boy, Master Soul.
Yes.
Played by Lee Jung Jang. Put some respect on that man's name, because he learned English in 4 fucking months just so he could be a part of this show.
That's some major dedication. And then it goes back to people saying the acting is terrible. And
They're fucking stupid.
I think the acting has been great.
It's been some of the best acting in all of Star Wars.
Yeah. Like, if you look back at the original trilogy and the prequels, the acting was terrible. Like, you had... Yeah, they became household name actors, but they were no-name actors. They didn't know what they were doing.
I would say that in the original, Harrison Ford and Carrie Fisher were always good, but everybody else was a little questionable.
Yeah.
Mark Hamill was a little questionable.
Well,
a lot of people don't want to see that.
No, and Harrison Ford wasn't even supposed to get the role.
Yeah, that's true. It was what made him famous, even though for some reason he despises it.
He hates it.
Harrison Ford kind of reminds me of my aunt. My old aunt, just angry all the time. They have the same cadences. It's hilarious to see now Han Solo, an old lady. And then, yeah, the prequels. I mean, do we even have to have a discussion about the prequels and bad acting?
I think everyone can know what we're talking about.
Yeah, if people want to say Episode 2's acting is better than this, there's no saving you.
No.
So we'll move on. My man, Master Soul, who is OSHA's former master, hears about what's going on, hears that OSHA's been arrested, and he doesn't believe it. He thinks that there's no way it can be OSHA, and we don't know this at the time, but in the back of his mind, he knows that it's May.
Yeah. Well, because, as we see later on in the episodes that there's a flashback and you see, and like it's implied that, he knows she's out there somewhere.
Certainly does. So after that, he goes after to see what happened to OSHA. He's sent out after her. And he goes to the planet Karlak, where OSHA's prison ship crash lands. And he goes with his new Padawan, Jackie, who is played by Daphne Keane, X-23 from Logan, the little girl.
Which I had
cool to see her grown up. Yeah, it's really... there's some great actors in this movie. I just can't see why people hate the acting so much. But Master Soul goes with Jackie and Yord to find the former apprentice. OSHA awakens on planet Karlak and follows a mysterious figure to visions of her home on Brendok. The mysterious figure ends up being, this is the big reveal, her twin sister May, who says she's going to kill all the Jedi in the vision.
But then it leads you to wonder why. Why does she hate them? Why does she want
We
them
still
all?
don't really have the answer to that.
No, we don't.
Master Soul and his Padawan and Yord get to Karlak. They follow OSHA's trail, eventually find her. Soul saves her from falling off a cliff while she's trying to run because she's frantic and doesn't know what's going on. And this is where Soul and OSHA reunite, and their relationship has been awesome in this series.
Yeah, it's like almost father-daughter like relationship.
It's probably closest Master Padawan relationship we've seen in live action.
To what?
Just compared to all the others that we've seen, because like Obi-Wan and Anakin fucking hated each other.
Yeah, they went back and forth the whole entire time. Like this is,
which is unfortunately one of the worst parts of the prequels.
Yeah, but with this, it's like it's almost like he didn't want her training to end, but he understood. And now that she's back in the fold, he's almost like he's found his long lost daughter.
That is what it feels like, and I love that relationship between them, and we'll dig more into that later. We then go to one of the more interesting scenes in the series where May returns to her quote-unquote master, who's a quote-unquote Sith at the time, we're not sure. And the thing that was really cool about this scene was that the Sith, quote-unquote, says he wants to kill the dreams of the Jedi. He doesn't just want to kill a Jedi, and he challenges May, who he claims to be his acolyte, to kill the dreams of the Jedi. She has to kill one without using a weapon to crush their spirit.
And that's my main question is, how does that crush their dreams or their spirit?
I think it's most likely just that if they can kill a Jedi without using a weapon, that could potentially mean... It could be like just a moral blow, I think. It's like, yeah, if you kill someone with a lightsaber, that's understandable.
Yeah.
If you kill someone with a blaster, that's understandable. If you kill somebody with poison, like we'll see later, that's understandable.
Yeah.
But if you can find a way to crush a Jedi's spirit, maybe sever their connection from the Force in some way.
Well, maybe it's like he wants a trickle-down effect. Like, you kill a Jedi without a weapon, and then other Jedi get wind of that, and they're like, well, we have this lightsaber that can pretty much cut everything and anything, and you couldn't stop someone that has no weapon.
Exactly.
It might make the Jedi question, like, what are we even doing? Are we even that important?
It just makes them second-guess themselves, which I think is what the Master was looking for. He wants the Jedi questioning if their way is truly the right way.
It's not.
Well, we know that for sure. This leads us into episode 2, Revenge Justice, where we see on Olega our little assassin May sneaking into a Jedi temple and attempting to assassinate Master Torben, who she can't touch through meditation, which was a fucking cool scene.
That was one of the coolest things I've seen with the Force. Like, she was basically fighting nothing.
Like, that's what I'm saying. This show is doing so many unique things with the Force that we haven't seen before.
It's showing that there's more than just, like, waving your hand. These are not the droids you're looking for.
Or pushing somebody away.
Yeah, pushing something or pulling something to you. Or grabbing your lightsaber. There's more that you can do with the Force.
And Master Torben's got to be pretty fucking powerful to be able to hold people back with his mind.
Yeah, and the fact that he's been in meditation for a very long time. And
I think Soul said 10 years.
Yeah, and I don't know if he can hear her, but obviously through the Force he can sense that she's there, and he doesn't have to do anything. He can just sit there, fold his arms, and float, and she can't touch him.
And I don't think he had talked in 10 years either.
No.
Which is freaking insane. Yeah, that guy definitely did something fucked up, that's for sure.
Yeah.
But Master Soul, Osha, Jackie, and Yord arrive to Olega, and while they land and kind of try and figure out what's going on, May meets her assailant, my boy Quamir, who is kind of like acting very simpletonish.
Yep.
And that throws red flags in my head right away. Because how could this guy who works for this shit be just some, I'm going to get drunk on the job and all this kind of guy?
Yeah. It's very Jar Jar-esque. We never got to see what was supposed to happen. Somewhere out there, George has the actual story of what he was going to do with that. But it's very similar. Like, he's just a goof that acts like he knows absolutely nothing. Like, what's the Force? You can pull things? That's kind of cool. I wish I could do that.
He sure fucking can.
Yeah.
But yeah, well, it was, I don't know, I just had red flags and warning signs going off in my head right when I saw this guy. I knew there was more to him than what he was leading on, and after a couple episodes of seeing more clues, which we'll talk about pretty soon, that is when I made the connection. Like, I wonder if Leslie Headland took inspiration from the Darth Jar Jar theory.
Yeah, and gave us somewhat of that simpleton story of some dude that doesn't know anything that really is the main protagonist, controlling everything.
Which is an awesome story, by the way.
Yes, the fact that we were naive and everyone hated Jar Jar and told George not to do it, basically, is asinine.
And now that's been confirmed, right? Like, that is true.
Yes and no.
Okay.
Essentially, like I said, George and Ahmad Best, the guy that did the motion capture for Jar Jar, when all that stuff came out, he basically tweeted implying, like, you guys finally caught on to what was going to happen, but we'll never see it.
I feel like he wouldn't say that if it wasn't true.
Exactly. I don't know that there will ever be a definite confirmation from George or anyone in Star Wars that was the plan, but it's pretty damn obvious.
I did see, however, that they made like a Lego cartoon out of it recently.
Yes, I don't know what I think it's for the new Lego movie that's coming out. It comes in a set with like a dark Millennium Falcon, and it has a light side Darth Vader and then a dark side Jar Jar.
Yeah, like why not? Why not do more what if stories and maybe show us that in animation or something?
Yeah, there's a lot of what ifs you could do for Star Wars, just like they did with Marvel. I'll write.
Anyways, yeah, right. Please, I would love to. But anyways, we'll move on from that. I'm sure we'll talk more about the Darth Jar Jar theory when we actually do a show on the Phantom Menace at some point down the line.
Yeah,
but Quamir, our simpleton assailant, knows how to develop a poison to kill Torben. Now, Osha, Sol, Yord, and Jackie, the gang, end up finding out what's going on. They know May is there. And when they go to the temple, May returns with poison, and Master Torben, for the first time in 10 years, speaks. And what he says is, we thought we were doing the right thing, which plays into the themes of, this is 100 years before the Phantom Menace. This is the build-up to the Jedi's corruption.
Yes. It's showing that their corruption has started, and I think it's the ideology of that, like, they are the elite people of the time frame, so whatever they do is perfect. And then you're starting to see now that, leading in as we see more in Attack of the Clones and Revenge of the Sith, that they are not, the ideal savior for everybody in the universe.
They're no longer the Avengers of the galaxy.
It's almost as if, they have the Force, they can use the Force, they want to be the only ones that can.
That is a major theme of this series.
Yes.
And I mean, that was kind of a major theme in the prequels, too.
Yeah.
So, Osha has another vision of May, and as we'll find out later on, we might as well just talk about it now. May doesn't know that Osha's alive. And Osha's getting visions of, like, her little sister, May. I'm just going to go ahead and assume that's the Sith trying to corrupt her.
Yeah, I think it's the Sith trying to portray what he wants them to know. Kind of like in The Last Jedi and The Force Awakens, Snoke was manipulating things where as if Kylo Ren and Rey were in the same room together, talking to each other, but they weren't. They're on two totally different planets, but he made it seem as though they're right there. So he's showing them what he wants so he can manipulate both of them how he needs.
That's a great point and a great connection to a past film. So, Osha and the gang finally arrive. They find Master Torben dead because he willingly drank the poison because of how awful he feels over what had happened in the past. That's probably still the biggest question in this series, is what did the Jedi do?
Yeah, what did you do that, was that bad? And also, it's one of those things like, okay, he's meditating. In the first episode, she's in a bar just kind of hanging out. And then, as we see, the Wookiee becomes a recluse. What did they do something that Sol didn't know about? Or is Sol just like that deep of a character that he can accept the bad and accept the good and not have to question anything? Or is he that manipulated by the Jedi that like he still thinks it was good?
There's definitely scenes later that I would say prove that Sol knows more than what he's leading on.
But he can hide it.
He can hide it. Sol reminds me very much of like an Obi-Wan character where he knows fucked up things are going on, but just chooses to ignore it because Jedi are supposed to be good.
Yeah, well, it's just like Obi-Wan knew that Padme and Anakin were, touching tips, and he kind of just was like, all right, whatever. I can't stop that. So he just kind of
There's no stopping Anakin, that's for sure.
No. Even though that's, he was a child and she was like 18.
Thank you, George Lucas, for the pedo writing.
Yeah, no one's questioned that, but they're going to question
Yeah,
it.
why are we questioning that? That's what we really need to be questioning more of. I feel like no one really talks about that aspect of the prequels.
Well, it gets brushed upon in Phantom Menace that, like, they're so young, and then, you get Attack of the Clones, and they're both grown up.
But Anakin's, like, fucking 8, and isn't she, like, 18?
Yeah.
At least 16, but if she's a queen, I would assume she's 18.
Yeah, I don't know. That just...
Are you an angel?
Yeah, that's a smooth line. I'll give him that.
For an 8-year-old,
yeah, that's
got some rings.
That's a smooth line, but I get it. You want when you're a kid, you find that older woman attractive, but that older woman should not pursue the child.
Obviously, that angel line rinsed up Padme.
It worked.
She was thinking about that many years later.
Yep.
Anyways, moving on. So, they get there too late. Master Torben's dead. And now it's up to Sol and the gang to figure out a new plan of how to trap May. Jackie comes up with the plan that she can have Osha dress up as May and try and convince Quamir to confess to what is going on. Overruling Yord, who was trying to come up with ideas, but everyone kind of just rejected his ideas. I had a great theory watching this that Yord would turn to the dark side, because at this point, he had been arguing with Sol earlier in the episode. His ideas were just overruled. Like, even in the first episode, Jackie kind of laughs at just the fact that Yord is coming with them. Like, Yord is, like, not a respected man.
No,
obviously.
He's not a respected Jedi by any of them.
No, he's a Jedi Knight, and they trust him. Oh, maybe that's why we don't see his apprentice.
Maybe
that's why. Maybe his apprentice don't even want to be around.
Yeah, maybe he's like, you're my master. Yeah, fuck that. I'm out.
Fuck this guy.
I'm leaving the Jedi Order. I'm out.
Might have happened off screen.
Yeah.
So I had a great theory that I thought Yord was going to turn to the dark side by the end of this and maybe become a new Acolyte or just another rogue Jedi. We'll talk more about why that can't happen later.
Yeah.
But I thought it was a good theory. They should have rolled with it. So Master Sol and the others stake out the supplier shop at night. And, well, actually, before that, May, Osha dressed up as May, goes into the supply shop and talks to Quamir. And this was another red alarm going off in my head, because Quamir starts acting really fucking creepy.
Yeah.
Like, he's glad to see Osha's here and are still alive.
Yeah, almost like, okay, now I know there's 2 of you. I can work with that.
Like, for sure I know there's 2 of you. Now there's, just in case one apprentice doesn't work out, I have another one.
I have a backup.
So they convince Quamir to help them out. Quamir rats out May, and they stake out the supplier shop. And when May shows up, Master Sol is waiting for her, and there's another really fucking awesome hand-to-hand martial arts style force combat scene. Sol, though, this is the big thing, is Sol is talking to May, gets in her head. This is when he realizes she doesn't know that Osha is alive.
No.
And on top of that, who doesn't know who her master is?
No. She has no idea that her master was the one that gave her, everything she needed. And that they had encountered him without knowing. And it's also one of those things, like you said, it raised red flags. Basically, I feel like he, now knowing what we know, she walked in, he's like, okay, there's 2 of you, cool, I can work with that. Yeah, I'll give you what you want. I'll help you trap her. That way I can escape.
My other gigantic question, besides where the fuck is Yord's apprentice, my second biggest question in this entire series is why the fuck did Yord need those binoculars to see this fight? Dude was like 10 feet above them.
Yeah.
Maybe not even that. Maybe 6 feet. Why did he need binoculars to watch Soul fight May?
Like you could have seen that firsthand, grabbed your popcorn, sat back and be like, all right, he's got this. Oh shit, he doesn't. But like why the binoculars? I feel like if they were like 6 towers away, I could see it. But they were right over it because they're staking out right where that place is at.
I don't know what that dude was up to. It was kind of weird.
Maybe he was just a blind Jedi.
Well, he is. Maybe he didn't. He's one of those guys. Maybe he needs glasses.
Maybe that's why they don't trust him. They're like, yeah, you can't actually see what just happened in front of you, can you? Yeah, we're not.
Like, this guy sucks so much he can't even see 6 feet in front of him.
Yeah, we're not going to use any of your plans. You can't even see like your hand in front of your face. You're done.
So yeah, the scene with Soul and May, really, really badass fight. Not quite as good as the Endara fight, but pretty close.
Yeah. Well, it's one of those things I don't think you can, that early on, you can't show what Soul can do yet.
No, and Soul's definitely holding back at this point for sure. But May, I mean, Soul's one of the Jedi that May is after, so she goes for it. And she also did do the thing where she tried to have him attack first.
Yeah.
I believe she did. Maybe she didn't at this point. I know she did with Torben, though. He might have just been so angered that she did go after Soul, now that I think about it.
Yeah, it might be one of those things like where she was backed into a corner.
Yeah.
And she couldn't initiate the fight and then attack. She had to kind of just be like, all right, I need to get the fuck out of here.
Plus, if she's killing these Jedi for revenge for her family, Soul is the one that's probably the most connected to it in her mind.
Yeah.
So, after this, May gets away from the battle, and this is the first time her and Osha cross paths in 16 years, and I would say that Osha definitely missed that shot.
Yes. That was one of those things where she's like, oh, my sister is alive. I need to stop her, but I can't. I can't have this be the way where I reintroduce myself to her as me shooting her.
Now, May gets away. Another scene that raises my eyebrows, like The Rock, is that May went to attack Quamir when she saw him. Like, you sold me out, and she went to stab him, and dude just effortlessly grabbed her and put her up against the wall. Like, May is this trained assassin who specializes in the Force. And she's a prodigy, and he's just some random Joe Schmo. Nah, he ain't doing that to her.
No.
So at that point, that wasn't the point that I would say made it obvious of the big reveal later, but it was all adding up in my head at this point.
Yeah, and those are things that I didn't really catch. Like, I just thought, like, oh, okay, like, maybe she didn't really want to kill him because she still needs him, because he's the only one that has connection to the Master. I didn't really put two and two together at that point that he was. But, yeah, no, it's like I forgot what they called it, but it's drunken kung fu.
Drunken fist.
Drunken fist, yeah. That's definitely what he portrays with his fighting and just the way he acts.
Similar to what, like, the Darth Jar Jar theory was.
Yeah.
Yeah, it very well could be. I would be very surprised if that isn't inspiration for this character.
Yeah.
So after that, after May and Quamir get away, Quamir tells her that there's another... He knows where the final Master is that she needs to kill besides Soul. And while Soul, May, and the rest of the gang, or Osha, get called back to Coruscant, they're not allowed to go after May. May and Quamir go after the very first Wookiee Jedi we've seen in live action, Master Kalnaka. And we see he's living on a planet that's similar to Kashyyyk. It kind of looks like Kashyyyk, and he seems to be fighting workers that are thugs that work for Jabba the Hutt.
Yeah, I think that's what it's implied. I don't know. Maybe Jabba.
It did say they were speaking Huttese.
Yeah, so maybe, there's someone that Jabba sent. Maybe Jabba wants... Because Wookiees, are used for many different reasons throughout Star Wars for, slave trading and stuff like that. And, mining, or even just being bounty hunters. So he could have been trying to get him to be like, all right, you're a Jedi that's lost his way. I need to use your abilities, so I need you to come to me. And obviously you're not going to, there doesn't matter who you send to him, you're not going to be able to stop him.
Oh, definitely not. And the planet was really cool. I like the environment of it. I'll talk more into where I think the inspiration of the planet came from. And I believe not the next episode, the one after that.
Yeah.
But the planet is called Kofar. Pretty cool name. So we go to episode 3, titled Destiny. And it shows Brendok, the home planet of Osha and May, and it shows them 16 years earlier when they were children, with Osha kind of still showing that she struggles with the Force, while May's just over here demonstrating like exemplary Force abilities even at that young of an age.
Yeah. Which then makes it, apparent as to why the Jedi would want to, as they call, help her. But you're basically kidnapping them, whether you want to admit it or not.
Basically. So this is the first time that we see a character that I talked to Mark earlier about, and he had a really cool theory that we'll talk about here in a second. Mother Coral. Yeah. He finds the girls and outside of the witch's coven and tells them to come home. Master Soul's in the distance watching them. This is where we see witches, not for the first time in live action and not the first time in Star Wars, but people had a real big issue with this.
I don't understand why people freaked out about it. Like, I can understand, like, you only know the original trilogy. You're like, oh, why is there witches? Why is there other people that use the Force besides a Sith and, Jedi? But witches have been around for a long time in Star Wars. They were in the Ewok cartoon. They were 85. They were in Rebels. They were in Clone Wars. They were in the Ahsoka show. It's not far-fetched to think that there's witches in Star Wars and witches that use the Force.
Well, in my opinion, like we'll see in this next segment, Mother Anastasia is arguing with Coral about the girls, and then they go to training where Mother Anastasia is teaching some of the younger or maybe less experienced witches in the coven, and she explains the Force as something we've never heard before. At least to my knowledge, we've never heard this before, the thread.
No.
It was cool. Yeah. It was fucking awesome to see that there's another culture out there or another religion that values the Force in a different way. This happens in real life. So why are people up in arms about this?
Yeah. And it's one of those things where, it's said throughout all of Star Wars, even, people that just seen the movies, the Force is everywhere. The Force is throughout the whole galaxy. So there's different planets that we haven't seen. They're not going to call it the Force. They've never heard the term the Force. They're going to call it something else. There's Thrawn's species called it something else. Even the Lasat, which is what we saw in Rebels, their whole species called it something different. The Force is just what the Jedi call it. That's just what people know. And I think they're scared that they're going to change the Force. And no, they're not.
I mean, I just want to point this out for people that are saying the thread is stupid and bad writing or whatever. You can literally go next door to your neighbor's house and they could have a completely different belief than you do.
Yeah.
So is it so hard to believe that across the galaxy there's different thoughts and different, religious ideologies? I don't know. People are fucking stupid.
They just wanted to bitch.
Yeah, there's a lot of people in this episode, I think, revealed it, that on the internet, and we all know this, but especially when it comes to Star Wars, there's people that just want to hate anything new that's Star Wars, and I don't get why. Like, I get if it's bad, it's bad. Like, please, I'll call it out any day. This is not bad.
No, there's parts of Star Wars that are bad, but this is not a bad part of Star Wars.
I mean, you've already heard Mark and I thrash the prequels and even give a small criticism on the original trilogy. I can't wait for you guys to hear my opinions on the sequels as they've aged over time in my head. But so, like, we're not biased Star Wars fans here. I don't want people to think that, we're just fanboys. Like, no, we're not. I don't like corporations. I fucking hate corporations. I despise that a giant corporation even has Star Wars, but the good part about it is at least we get more content because George Lucas wasn't doing jack shit with it.
No, they have the money and the funds to give us more, and they're gonna do things we don't like, but I don't think this is a show to complain about. There hasn't been anything that really raises any red flags. It's like, oh, this is awful. They're ruining Star Wars.
And I just want to point out that, like, not everything in the EU was good.
No.
There was a lot of shit from things that I've researched and read.
Well,
or just eye-rolling stuff.
Like, basically with the EU, there was nothing happening with Star Wars, so anyone was writing books. Like, there's books out there that make no sense. There's more books.
Not like all this was even approved by George Lucas. He basically just told people, do whatever the fuck you want. It doesn't count as part of my series.
Yeah. It's like there's characters that people love that they don't exist. They're not a thing. Like, and there's things that people, just like with wrestling, everyone adores the Attitude Era. There was things in the Attitude Era that were awful.
There was a lot of shit in the Attitude Era.
There's parts of Star Wars that are awful. Let's consider the Timothy Zahn part the important books in the EU.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, that's probably what I think most people consider to be the best part, and there are aspects of that series that I know of that are really good. I think that's what a lot of people are most disappointed about. Got decanonized, but now they're slowly starting to bring it back in.
Yeah, they're starting to write it in ways that fits what they're doing and taking what George had and making it fit. Because a lot of that stuff didn't fit into what Star Wars was as George had it.
Right, and George himself, I'm pretty sure, said that most legends he didn't even consider as part of the story.
No.
So I don't really get why people... I mean, I get why people who maybe followed all the legends were upset when it got erased. But I'll just say, like, from my perspective, as a younger fan who didn't grow up in the 80s, 70s, 80s, and 90s with all the legend stuff, like, I kind of appreciated that because it kind of gave me a fresh start.
Yeah, there's nothing, not necessarily to go off of, but you weren't surrounded by it, so it wasn't something that you cherished as part of Star Wars. It was there, and that's basically it.
I don't know why people get so caught up with canon on things. Just enjoy what you like.
Yeah.
Like, who gives a fuck if the story's canon or not? If it's canon to you, that's what really should matter.
Right.
I mean, and the Legends is still there for you to read. If you don't want to read any of the Disney shit, or you don't want to consider any of the Disney shit part of the story, you don't have to.
No. You can consider what you want. Like, if you don't want to consider anything that's live action, you just want to consider, like, the expanded universe books as part of Star Wars, then that's what you like, fine.
And if you hate this series so much, if you can't stand looking at the Acolyte, then why do you continue to watch it and bitch online?
Yeah.
Don't you have 30, 40 minutes you could be putting into something else?
Yeah, just go watch something else or go do something. Get a job.
Like, when I don't like something, I don't fucking watch it.
Yeah.
Like, as simple as that.
I didn't like the Star Wars Resistance cartoon, so I watched 2 episodes and that was it.
There's plenty of things that not even out in Star Wars, but outside of Star Wars that I just don't care. Like, I like Walking Dead. I watched a few seasons of it and fell off. I mean, and I didn't sit online and bitch about it for 11 seasons.
Yeah,
there was some things I didn't like, and then after about season 6, I just fell off and never watched the rest of it.
Yeah, it lost your interest, so I'm done.
I could be using my time wisely somewhere else instead of bitching online about something I don't like. I don't know. Just sounds like a waste of time to me.
Yeah.
Anyways, the thread is cool. Mother Anastasia explains that Force is basically hugging the thread. And I don't know, the thread was just a really interesting and cool fucking idea to incorporate into the live-action Star Wars.
Yeah, and she says it's tugging on the thread. So is it one of those things like in their mind where like you use the Force, like say you're like, oh, I don't want to get up to get that apple. I'm going to use the Force and pull that apple to me. Does that then cause some kind of reaction in the Force in their mind?
I think that's how they view it. Like, I think the witches of this coven view it as you are part of the Force and your actions hug and change the Force, whereas the Jedi more believe that the Force is like already laid out and like the Force already has a plan for you. It's cool to see different ideologies in Star Wars.
Yeah, it brings the opportunity for there to be other things in Star Wars.
So after this, we see May block her mother's Force push. Osha hides behind her sister, continuing to enforce that Osha's not really good with the Force. And then we find out that Osha doesn't even want to be in this coven. She doesn't even want to be here with her sister and the rest of the witches. She wants to go explore the galaxy. And another thing that I have to bitch about here with the internet, Star Wars fans in particular, this is the exact same storyline as Luke Skywalker. Why are people bitching about this? You liked Luke Skywalker because he was a farm boy that wanted to go see the galaxy, and everybody praises that as this is the greatest plot of all time. Osha is living in a cult and wants to escape to go see the galaxy. What's the difference?
There is no difference. I think the reason they don't like it is because it's not what they know. It's a retelling of a story in a different way. Like we're not getting, technically 9 movies that tell that story. We're getting it in a show. And it's a whole different narrative of the same thing.
And it's an even deeper version of it.
Yeah.
I would argue.
Yeah, because in Luke's aspect, he's a farm kid that wants to explore the galaxy and go do shit. He doesn't want to work all the time. This is a girl that wants to get out of a cult. That's a lot more interesting.
Who, as we find out, was born to be in the cult.
Yes.
Whereas Luke was just born and hidden away. But so yeah, this is the same storyline as Luke Skywalker's. I just people just don't like this shit because it says Disney Plus on it. Let's just be real.
Yeah. If it said George Plus, they'd be like, "Oh my god, this is great."
Which George was probably the most detrimental thing to happen to Star Wars since the end.
Yes.
Anywho, there's this ascension ceremony, basically for the witches' children specifically to graduate and become lifelong loyal members to the cult. Osha doesn't want to do this, obviously, because she wants to go see the galaxy, and this is when we see the Jedi, the ones that May has been after and killing, Master Indara Sol, Padawan Torben at the time, and Master Kalnaka, I believe he was a master at this time, confronting the witches about training children. And this kind of ties back into what you were saying earlier about how the Jedi want to have control over every Force user.
Yeah. Like, they don't care that the witches use the Force, but the fact that they have kids there that are going to use the Force in a way that's not the Jedi way is what angers them.
Yeah, they want to have control of basically the next generation.
Yeah.
Which I would assume it's like thinking that, you brainwash, and I'm not saying the Jedi are doing this, but it's just you brainwash one generation and it completely eviscerates like cults like the witches and stuff.
Yeah, because then they don't exist. No one knows that there was other Force users.
This is also revealed where the twins were not born with a father. Mother Anastasia tells the Jedi they were born basically from the Force. And this was another super fucking controversial topic, which I can't even believe we have to discuss this, but let's do it. So, the Force. Chosen One. People are saying that this is the most travestial thing that's ever happened in Star Wars. That this completely destroys George Lucas's vision, eviscerates Darth Vader's character, And they just can't fucking believe that there were children born of the Force prior to Anakin. Well, let me just tell all of you guys that Anakin wouldn't do shit. He wasn't special. Once they made episode 7, once they decided, hey, we're going to continue this story, what the fuck did Anakin do?
Nothing.
Other than just murder a bunch of fucking people. What did he do?
Like, if you want to say it did that, okay. So the Chosen One turned evil, basically hunted down anybody that used the Force and killed them. And his whole thing is he was going to bring balance to the Force. Well, if he brought balance to the Force and there's only him and the Emperor, there's no balance.
Right.
So he didn't.
And
he wasn't the Chosen One.
George Lucas confirmed that bringing balance to the Force means light side only. And that's what he said.
Yeah.
I disagree with that. I think it makes more sense symbolically that there would be the equal amount of dark and light, but he said it goes with the light side. We're going to go with what the creator says. So basically, Anakin's whole Chosen One prophecy was ruined the minute they decided to bring another Sith into the story in episode 7. If you're going to bitch about it, bitch about that. Don't bitch about this. This doesn't break anything.
No, because they weren't made to be the Chosen One. They were made basically because it's a coven of female witches. Well, how can
they can't have children?
How can we grow this coven? Well, let's use the Force to create our children, which in return, if you view the Force how you're going to defend it that he was the Chosen One, the Force would have stopped them if there was an issue. The Force basically went, okay, no harm, no foul. You're going to grow your coven. They're not going to do anything that's going to imbalance me. We're good.
If anything, this might actually add more layers to Anakin's birth as the story goes on. Like,
and realistically, with Plagueis and Palpatine trying to manipulate life and create life for them, the Force in return made Anakin. And then Anakin decided to be bad, so it doesn't change anything. If anything, it just shows that the Force allows people to make it as long as you're not Sith. Because basically it stopped them because they were Sith. That witches aren't Sith, they're just witches. So it's going to
just their own little cult.
Yeah, and if, had they not been massacred or died, whatever had happened, they probably would have done it again, had 2 more children to grow into their coven, and the Force would have allowed it to happen. Or as they call it, the thread would have been like, okay, well, we'll allow it to happen. There's going to be a reaction in their mind somewhere else because they're pulling on the thread.
I don't, obviously the people bitching don't think too deeply about this. They just think on the surface of what it is and decide to rant online about it. But and this is why I've always said, I've been saying it since episode 7 came out, that, okay, if you're going to introduce more Sith, you have to bring up a reason why they exist after Darth Vader killed Palpatine, where he Chosen One brought balance to the Force. Well, the best way to do all that and have stories continue after Return of the Jedi, this is just my opinion, is if the Chosen One is born every however many years, when darkness rises, a new Chosen One is born, kind of borrowing from like Avatar The Last Airbender. They do that in a similar fashion. Rey would have been the Chosen One of her time.
Yeah.
I think that would have been a much better story than what we ended up getting.
Yeah, and I think that might have been the route they were going, but it somehow got lost in translation with shitty directors. And
it would also explain why the Skywalker lightsaber called out to her, why she had this connection with Kylo, because she's technically Anakin reincarnated. And now it's up to her to figure out how her as the Chosen One is going to do differently than he did.
Yeah, and if you're going to think about it that way, then realistically, it's not the Skywalker lightsaber; it's the Chosen One's lightsaber. It's going to call to whoever is made for that time frame. So, where those movies left off, 200 years from now, there could be another one that the Force has to make, and then somewhere along the line, that lightsaber is going to resonate with them.
Or that crystal, kyber crystal, whatever. There's so many cool ways they could have went about it. I think they went probably the shittiest way possible.
Yeah.
But, anywho, so the next scene that we get into is Mother Coral is pretty pissed off about what happened because Mother Anastasia promises to Osha that she can, or the children at least, can go be tested to see if they can become Jedi, because I guess that's like the galactic law. Osha really wants to join the Jedi because she wants to see the galaxy, and it was kind of cool to see her initial interaction with Sol and him giving her his lightsaber and just her awe of it.
Yeah, and it was, she has her way out. And, technically she's being a good mom. She's like, okay, I want you to be happy. Here's your way out. I'm not going to take it away.
Exactly. So, Mother Coral's pretty pissed off about what happened here. Like, extremely pissed off. And Anastasia is kind of trying to calm her down. Now, Mark, I kind of want you to, even though it didn't happen, I kind of want you to explain what your theory was on the Master and Mother Coral's connection.
So one, when we see what had happened, there's no sign of her. So my first theory was like, okay, the Sith is her. She wants revenge for them. One, taking her kids. Two, killing her coven. And that still could be the thing. It still could end up being that, she is the overseeing Sith. And with the aspect that they said, what was it that they were chanting? The power of one, the power of two, the power of many. They could have the ideology that, the rule of two doesn't exist to them. So it could very well be that she survived. She's the one controlling everything. And she basically is using him to get her kids back.
We kind of like skipped over the ascension aspect, like the ritual. What do you think they're getting their power from? Because clearly something shot up into space and came back down to them give that symbol to May.
So that symbol, I believe, is very like reminiscent of Abeloth, which is a character in now the EU that was she wasn't really a Sith. She was just a dark side Force user. And it's a symbol that you see all throughout their coven. So it could be that they, pray or worship to her, and it could be that she chooses, okay, you sacrifice two of your kids, I'm going to choose this one. And that could be what the light was. There's many different things that are out in the galaxy. It could be a sign that she's there. We might see something about her later on. But it's interesting that that's the quotes that they use, the power of one, the power of two, the power of many, and then those symbols are very remnants of her.
I think I remember seeing discussion, too, when Ahsoka was going on, that Thrawn and his witch coven were calling to Abeloth.
Yeah.
And to my understanding, because I remember watching the Rebels cartoon with you, and there were some mystical creatures that were Force capable. Is Abeloth maybe an evil spirit of the Force?
She could be. She's this. I believe the story is that she was, she was a person. Then there was a event that happened that she became this being that has tentacle hands and shit, but still can use the dark side of the Force. But it's one of those things she's out in the outer rim of Star Wars. She's out there, but no one's ever seen her. We've never talked about where she's from. In going back to Rebels, when that planet that they ended up on, Thrawn and Ezra, she could very well not necessarily be from that planet, but she could be in that galaxy.
A region of the galaxy. Yeah, probably. Probably.
That region is very powerful with the Force.
Yeah, that wouldn't surprise me, and I hope we do see Abeloth as one of the main villains.
It'd be a very interesting and scary route for Star Wars to take.
It would be a way to tie this into The Mandalorian and everything, too, in a way.
Yeah. But it'd be a very dark turn for Star Wars in live action, per se, because like those things exist in the expanded universe and books, but to see it in live action would be very interesting if they go that route.
Thrawn have any connection to Abeloth in Legends?
I don't know that he did, like, in the Timothy Zahn book, but there's people that are referenced in that book that know who she is, that he is used. Because Thrawn is very, not manipulative, he's very strategic. So, like, I feel...
He knows everything.
And yeah, it's one of those things, he knows everything. So, when he was with the Emperor... And the Emperor's like, hey, I need you to go explore these places. I wouldn't be surprised if he went to those places and was like, oh, shit, like, this motherfucker could kill the Emperor. I'm going to not tell him that this exists and use it for me to take over.
Be a great story to see as the Ahsoka series and the Mandalorian movie come out in the future. So, continuing on with the Acolyte... We see Osha and May going to be tested by the Jedi, and Osha breaks her promise to May that she's gonna, fail the test. Osha goes in there and is pretty accepting of the Jedi. She tries to lie, but she can't. And I thought it was really fucking interesting to see, like, more prequel stuff. Master Torben tested Osha for the blood for the midichlorians, like Qui-Gon did to Anakin, and then they did the same test like Yoda and Mace Windu were doing to Anakin when they were testing his, capabilities. It was really awesome to see that stuff return, and I get the hate that people have for midichlorians, but I don't agree that it's like universe shattering to Star Wars. What's your opinion on it?
For me, like, yeah, there's no talk of it in the original trilogy. Then you get to the prequels and, it's a major thing when they find Anakin. For me, it was just something that added to the story. Like, oh, to be a Jedi, you have to have these counts in your body. Otherwise, if you have the Force, you don't exist to the Jedi. Like, they can't use you. Because obviously, as we see, there's, the witches use the Force. Do they all have midichlorians, or is it just certain people? I don't think it changes anything in Star Wars or is detrimental. I think it's just an added thing, like, hey, these are what Jedi have. We're going to continue to use this as, a test to see. Because you see it in the Bad Batch, too. Like, they're trying to test the midichlorians on the kids that they're stealing. Because you need to have a high midichlorian count in order to accomplish what they were trying to accomplish with the Emperor. But I don't think it changes anything. It just adds to the aspect of, there's other factors to someone being a Jedi that you could find. Like, you could have the abilities. Like, she could have done the test and, passed and be like, oh, yeah, that's a rock. That's an airplane. That's this. That's that. But had no midichlorians, so it's like, they can't use her.
Right. And the midichlorians, I understand people's perspective if they say that it ruins the, like, religious aspect of the Force. I kind of get where they're coming from there, but at the same time, it also kind of explains why Luke was so good so quick.
Yeah.
Like, he was just born with a higher midichlorian count, and I feel like that doesn't really bother me because I'm like a big Dragon Ball fan, and that's kind of just the theme in anime or Dragon Ball in general, where some characters are just born more powerful than others. Sometimes there's a reason for it. Sometimes there's absolutely no reason for it. It just is that way.
Yeah.
And I think, it really does explain why Luke specifically, because Luke isn't the chosen one. Technically, Anakin was, if you want to call it that, at this rate, but his son, of course, would have a very high midichlorian count too. So I don't think it breaks anything in Star Wars.
No.
So it was cool to see that stuff return. And then Osha being intrigued by Soul, intrigued by the Jedi, she is chosen to go and become a Padawan. And she gets Mother Anastaea's blessing, which I really didn't see that coming. I thought the witches were going to be pissed. Most of them were, but
Yeah.
her mother wasn't. Her mother was actually pretty cool and said, if that's what you want to do, if that's the way you want to tug on the thread, then you do that.
Yeah. It's a mother basically wanting their kid to be happy. Like, okay, you don't want to do the witch stuff with the Force and you want to go be a Jedi, then go be a Jedi. I'm not going to stop you. But then, obviously, the Jedi had other intentions.
Mother Cora wasn't happy about it because she birthed the children, as we learn.
She went through the struggle. I get it.
And another person who was really upset was May, because when Osha returns to her room and is packing up, Mick comes in and basically says, I'll kick your ass.
Yeah.
You ain't going nowhere.
If we can't have you, they can't have you.
So, people are saying this is bad writing. I don't think it is. A kid would be stupid enough to burn down the fucking house if they were devastated over what just happened. Like, I feel like people don't take into account that a fucking whatever she was, 8-10-year-old child is not going to have the same capabilities of thinking as a 30-year-old or a 20-year-old.
Yeah.
I don't understand why people hate it.
That is very much something a kid would do. Like, it's an extreme thing a kid would do, but it's
right.
It's in par with what a kid would do. Like, you ever seen a kid be told they can't have chicken nuggets?
Exactly.
You know damn well every toy that's in their reach is going fucking flying.
You tell them we got McDonald's at home, they're going to throw a fit.
Yeah. They're coming out of their car seat and they're slamming on that brake to turn you around.
So, I don't know. And someone as powerful as May, it would make sense because she's not thinking that anything bad is going to happen, really. She's just thinking, I'm stopping my sister. Even if I have to kill her, I'm stopping her. It's just some stupid thought a 10-year-old, probably somebody really has had, maybe even somebody listening to this had once when they were a kid. They didn't do it, but it was like we all have had stupid thoughts when we were children.
Yeah, like, I can't go to my friend's house. Well, I'm gonna light your cigarette and leave it in the ashtray and throw paper. I'm pissed.
You're gonna run away.
Yeah, I'm gonna run away.
Kids think stupid, illogical shit, and if I was as powerful as May, I may have burned down a house at some point too in my life.
Yeah, which then proves the point as to why Jedi want to take them, because kids can't think like an adult, so they want to take them so they can make them think like them.
True, very true, very astute.
That's a $10 word.
So, May starts burning down their room. Osha escapes. There's chaos. And probably the strangest, and actually, besides the Yort's Padawan not being in this, the most mysterious part of this entire season so far is the witches are all fucking dead. Just dead. Just all corpses laying everywhere. Fire spewing. But you know that, Force witches probably didn't die from fire?
Yeah.
And then you see Soul running just frantically through this chaos. Just why the fuck is he there? And he finds Osha and May. What the fuck's going on here?
I don't know. I think... to think that witches that can use the Force couldn't just be like, oh, I'm going to put up, a Force wall and put the fire out, it can't spread. There had to have been other factors that prevented them from stopping the fire.
My only true guess to this is just probably the simple, most obvious guess is just the Jedi knew that these witches are out here now. They have these children. The witches told the children to lie to them to not be accepted. So probably Master Andara and them decided we gotta wipe this whole coven out and take those children with us.
Otherwise, they become a threat to us.
Exactly. A potential threat. That's just what I'm assuming, but I feel like Mother Coral might still play into this. She was pretty pissed about what happened. I could see her being the one that killed Anastasia.
Maybe.
But either way, we know the Jedi did something fucked up.
Yes.
Because Master Torben apologized and drank a poison to commit suicide.
Yeah, you don't just do that because, you went there and did the right thing.
No, definitely not. So, May falls seemingly to her death. We know she doesn't. And Sol saves Osha, takes her back to Coruscant, tells her that she'll never have to feel like this again, but looks ominous. He looks sad. Like he just did something fucked up.
Yeah. It's almost like he's telling her, like, you're never going to have to feel like this again because I'm not going to tell you what actually happened.
Yeah, he definitely, you can see regret on his face. That kind of ties back to what we were talking to earlier. This is only one scene that I saw that, and there's more later. But obviously, the end of the episode, we see May survived, and she's standing in front of that tree that her and her sister used to sit in front of. Some, looking frantic and scared, and now you're basically an orphan without any adults and no clear path of where you're going to go in the universe. You could see that leading to becoming an Acolyte assassin.
Yeah. Someone comes along and basically, like the Jedi are going to do to her, manipulate her into what they want her to be.
So now we move into episode 4, Day. We see Master Kalnaka living on the planet Kofar, surrounded by these mysterious symbols.
That the witches use.
Right, and looking back at it, it did kind of, one of the symbols did kind of look like the one that's on May's forehead.
Yeah. So is it
the Mortiz's Dabeloth?
Maybe he, went into being a recluse and was like, okay, they worship something that uses the Force that's not Jedi. I want to know what it is. So he could have been trying to figure out what it was that they were worshiping or how they used the thread. Also, if he hadn't perished, we could have seen a Wookiee witch Jedi.
What a sad day it is that we didn't see such a thing. Either way, Kalnaka was maybe learning the witch's ways because he felt guilty about what happened. Obviously, everybody was feeling guilty about what happened.
Except
something happened. No, Sol's feeling guilty. He's just not letting Osha know, I think. But.
Yeah.
So anyways, May and Quamir arrive on Kofar, and another red flag moment where Quamir says that he's traveled through these forests, these uncharted lands. What the fuck is this supplier guy, simpleton, merchant, whatever,
drunk
dude, walking through this forest full of these insane creatures without a map and surviving and living to tell the tale? This doesn't make any sense.
No.
That's another reason I was suspicious of this strange fellow, and also along with the fact that he's so interested in why or how May is going to kill Kalnaka, and so interested in the Master's plan.
And also, could he be questioning it because he tried and he couldn't do it? So he's like, what are you going to do that I didn't try?
That's a great analysis. I didn't even think about that. That makes a lot of sense. Maybe he did try, but maybe give a way to do it. Maybe
it's one of those things he tried to do it to all. Well, no, because then they would have had wind of him, and it would make sense that he's the only one he tried because he's a recluse.
Could be. I mean, either way, maybe he wants an acolyte because he needs another person to think outside of the box.
Yeah. Well, actually, going back to... Well, we haven't gotten there yet, but when the Jedi go there, they say that he has not responded.
And that was one of the next scenes coming up, was that when they go there, the transmission is going nowhere.
So is it one of those things where he went there before and had already done what he needed to do and he knew the Jedi were coming?
Maybe. I mean, I kind of just figured that the transmission wasn't going through because he was already fucking dead.
Well, I just figured it wasn't going through because he's like, fuck the Jedi. Like, I don't want to talk to you guys. I'm done. But obviously, as we know now, like, what happened, maybe that's why he already knew, like, the woods and how to get there because he had already gone there and done it.
Could be a little of both.
Yeah.
So, we get to another controversial scene here in Star Wars where Master Venestra and a small group of Jedi, like their own little council, including Ki-Adi-Mundi, are discussing how to handle May and who her master could be. Now, at this point in time, there haven't been Sith for, I believe, like thousands of years. So these Jedi don't even know what a Sith is. They've maybe heard stories but don't think it's real.
Yeah, they don't think there's anyone that could do
prophecies.
what a Sith does.
So they have no idea. They're talking about, could this be a splinter op? Is this a rogue? Blah, blah, blah. But the controversial part about this scene is Ki-Adi-Mundi, and people are saying the reason why is because he wasn't born at this time. But that date is from Legends, from my understanding.
Yeah, so long story short, the only thing that came out was in a Star Wars catalog of his age, and George even said, like, yeah, no, that's not, I didn't write that, that's not true. Like, his age is still a mystery, so he could be 17 at this time. We don't know.
And as I've said, George didn't consider everything that's Legends canon. Yeah. So even if it's in a book somewhere or a comic that we're unaware of, Legends doesn't count anymore to Disney, so Disney can do whatever the fuck they want.
Yeah, and at this point, to keep his quote that he had alive, he didn't see a Sith do anything, he just saw a dude.
In fact, they didn't even mention a Sith. No one said Sith, so as long as Ki-Adi-Mundi doesn't appear later in this series and he's a Sith, he's probably not going to find out, because I'm assuming, we see in this scene, Master Venestra is hesitant and doesn't want to tell the High Council about what's going on because of the High Council's relationship to the Senate. It's kind of already showing political games and reluctance that the other Jedi have to their High Council being so involved in politics. And yeah, as long as Ki-Adi-Mundi isn't seen later in the series, this could easily be covered up. Just like how Venestra is trying to cover it up from the High Council. Presumably that's where Yoda is right now and whoever else is on it.
Yeah.
So as we move on, Master Soul talks to Venestra and convinces her to let him go after May. And while that's going on, Quamir and May are walking through the woods after Kalnaka, and pretty much the final scene that solidified in my head that Quamir was the Sith, when even May is catching on something's weird with him, and she asks him, have you ever seen his face? And Quamir just changes the subject.
Mm-hmm.
So that was, but at that point I was wondering, like, are they doing this on purpose? Are they doing too much here to throw us off?
To, make you think, like, okay, that's the easy answer, like, everyone's going to assume it's him.
And I just want to point out, like, because people are bitching that Quamir being the Sith was too easy to call. Yeah, it was easy to call, and I can understand being a little, hesitant of that. But look what happened when a certain director, Rian Johnson, decided to try and subvert everybody's expectations. It didn't really work out.
Nope.
So, in Star Wars specifically, I would rather take the easy answer and the simple answer as long as it's written well than a random thing that happens that almost goes against everything that the series was standing for at the time. So, yeah. subverting expectations is good when you do it right, but
this was done right.
let's just not do it for the sake of having a surprise. Quamir being the Sith, perfectly fine with me. Anywho, so Master Soul finds Osha before she leaves the temple, convinces her to come help him find May. Soul thinks there's still good in May, where Osha's not so sure about that, but Osha does show some intrigue of rejoining the Jedi in this scene. I'm curious to see if we see that by the end of this series, or if we see Osha turn into something else by the end of this series.
Hint, hint.
So, Master Vanestra did have an interesting quote here that I want to just talk about when she was talking to Soul. She said, "I fear May is only a small part of her master's larger plan, a plan that is difficult to see, some sort of shift, something to tip the scales." It makes me wonder if Vanestra knows that something darker is rising out there in the universe. Because no one else really seems to have any worry that it could be anybody that's a threat to the Jedi except for her. So that makes it even more interesting that she's not going to tell the High Council about it.
Maybe she's in on it. It's an inside job.
Maybe. I know she's from the books, so maybe not. But
yeah, probably not.
Maybe so. I mean, this is 100 years before the Phantom Menace, so anything is possible at this point.
Yeah. And I mean, going off that, like, you have to know, you have to assume that whatever happens gets expunged before we get to that timeline.
Right. It has to, because the Jedi, besides for maybe like Yoda, the Jedi didn't really know anything was going on out there. Or if they did, they weren't talking about it.
Yeah.
So this is the point when Yord informs the team that Kalnaka is unresponsive, and Soul leads a team of Jedi with Osha to Kofar, and they have this little friend named Basil, new little alien guy. He also had some controversy. Mark, what do you have to say about that?
It's a little tiny rodent, and it's staring at her, and she asks, is it or he or they, whatever she said, with us? And people got mad that she said they. Like, what would you call it if you saw that? I would ask the same question. Is like it or they, is that thing, whatever the fuck it is that good or is it bad? Should it be here? Should I be afraid? Is it going to help us? Can it talk to me? Is it going to eat me? Just staring at me, I'd be scared too. I'd ask the same question. I don't understand why people are freaking out about that.
I went back to watch the scene because I was like, maybe I missed it, because I'm not sitting here looking for, feminism and all this sort of social justice stuff when I'm watching a show. I went back and watched it, and she said it so casually. She was like, is he or they? Like, it wasn't like, is he or they?
It was, I'm concerned.
It wasn't
that
obvious.
Yeah. I'm concerned that it's staring at me and looks like it wants to eat me. Am I safe?
I people just look for anything these days to tear apart. And don't get me wrong, there is a lot of unnecessary social justice warrior shit in modern movies and TV shows, but this is not one of those times, people. This was very simple. It's a creature. I would call it a they too.
Yeah.
Anyways, Basil has a pretty good nose, and they use him to smell. I forgot what it was. I think it was like a rag or something that Kalnaka wore. It was something. I can't remember what it was, to track down the Jedi Master with scent. There's a pretty wild scene here where Osha stops Yord while they're traveling through the forest and asks him that if Soul is unwilling to kill May, he should. Now, again, I thought there'd be more to this scene. It's kind of sad that there isn't, in my opinion.
It was a wasted, exchange.
This is one of those times. Now, granted, the series isn't over yet, so I don't know what could happen, but this is one criticism that I will say is I feel like Yord was just, he had all these interesting little scenes and, you know, versions and kind of made you think, and for him to just not be around anymore, like, if you want to call that bad writing, I can kind of understand, because the scenes were just pointless. They didn't lead to anything.
I could get behind that being bad writing.
Definitely. Anywho. So moving on. Walking through the depths of Kofar's forest, Osha begins to feel the force again and feels the creatures, and I don't know if that's just happening because she's in this very force-sensitive area, but or is it happening because she's getting closer to May? That's kind of my question. Like, maybe the more she interacts with May, the more it's coming out of her, since they're twins and children of the Force. The other interesting thing that I liked about this was Kofar is very much inspired by the original design of Kashyyyk from Knights of the Old Republic. If anybody's played that, they'll remember those tall trees, that misty forest, the dangerous wildlife lurking within. And I read somewhere that Leslie Headland did take a lot of inspiration from Star Wars video games, so it was really awesome to see this make a live-action appearance.
Yeah, and I think that's where I left off in the game, is when you get to Kofar, and there was a recluse Jedi that you were trying to find on Kofar as well.
There was. I can't remember his name because it's been a while since I played the game, but there was. So definitely a lot of inspiration from KOTOR in this series. I think Leslie Headland even wants to make a KOTOR series, like live action series after this.
It needs to happen.
It needs to happen. And with what I've seen here, I'd be okay if she did it, honestly. Yeah. She seems to know her shit when it comes to Star Wars lore and legends, which we'll get into a little more later. But so May and Quamir stop to rest, and May suggests that her master's final test is impossible. Then traps Quamir and says, I don't need to kill the Jedi. My sister's alive. I don't need to serve this master anymore, because there's obviously maybe a little more going on here than what she's been led to believe. And Quamir basically gives this really dark, he'll kill you thing. And that was the final nail in the coffin when I was like, yeah, he's the Sith.
He's the guy.
He's got to be the guy. So May traps Quamir, takes off. There's a little scene where Sol tells Osha that she's going to face her past, and once they secure May, he's going to tell them 3 things. Which basically tells me Sol was definitely in on the fucked up fuckery on
their planet,
Vendok. I would assume we're going to see that in the next episode. That explanation finally.
It has to be.
Or at least maybe episode 7.
Yeah.
But this is where our little friend, Basil.
Call him Basil.
Yeah, Basil is probably a better name. But Basil, he finds May, freaks her out. She runs into Master Kalnaka's hut to find our Wookiee Jedi dead.
He did.
I was sad to see this.
Yeah.
Because I wanted to see a Wookiee Jedi in action.
But like you had said, you read that there was time constraints and it didn't fit the tension to do anything.
It didn't.
So do I wish I saw it? Do I wish I saw him fight? Yes.
Of course.
But I understand why. Like, you're not going to have the time or the ability to do it right and do it justice. So I understand not having it happen. There's going to be other shows where you could go and show that. It won't be hit that character, but you can show a different Wookiee Jedi.
I would much rather the storyline and the tension not be broken by a fight. Like, it was actually a lot more interesting to find Kalnaka laying there dead. Like, that definitely... You want to talk about a good subversion of expectations. I think that was one.
Yeah, and it added to the tension. Like, oh shit, she found him.
Big
He's
time.
dead. Now they're going to think she did it, even though she was basically going to turn herself in.
Yeah, she wanted to turn herself in at this point. But once she finds that, she knows she's fucked. Because one of the most ominous scenes happens here where the Sith floats in the Master kind of like a ghostly apparition, and he comes in, and this scene's creepy as hell. It's probably the creepiest scene in Star Wars.
Yeah.
And his helmet with that creepy jack-o'-lantern smile was cool as fuck, I thought.
Yeah, I mean, Star Wars has really not made a bad helmet. So
the Sith comes in, throws Osha to the side. All the Jedi ignite their lightsabers because they know, this is some serious shit. And, which, again, we talked about, we haven't seen a lot of Jedi ignite their lightsabers in this series. So you knew shit was going down when the whole squad rolled up with lightsabers, run at this guy, and he blows them all away like they're nothing. Absolutely nothing. That was insane. And this Sith is something to not be fucked with, and that leads us into the final episode, episode 5, Night. Osha awakens and finds our buddy, our little ghostly friend Sith, slaughtering
everybody.
The entire team of Jedi.
And it was not, he did not hold back. The writing did not hold back. There was, not only did he kill them all, there was, there was neck snapping. There wasn't just lightsabers going through people. He was just killing.
I just want to get this out there real quick. Y'all are the ones that have been on the internet trashing this series for the last 4 episodes. For the last 3 weeks. If you have been trashing this series left and right, bad writing, bad costume design, bad characters, blah, 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 I don't want to fucking hear you.
Nope.
I don't want to hear you say that this was a good episode. You don't even deserve that.
Nope. I want to see you pick it apart and complain for no reason. You have
pick it apart. Because we straight saw some of the best lightsaber combat of all time in just this 30-minute episode.
Yep.
So, any of y'all that were out there talking shit, I want you to keep that energy of talking shit, because this was a good-ass fucking episode.
Yep.
Now...
Oh, good.
Now, we get into another little tidbit where we see cortosis. This metal, it was from Legends, and it's also in Disney canon from what I researched, being in one of the novels Thrawn Alliance, where Thrawn teams up with Anakin and meets him for the first time. But cortosis is a metal that basically destabilizes energy, or kind of blocks energy. And this Sith, he has an arm gauntlet, and his helmet is made out of it. And he disrupts these fucking lightsabers, and that blew my mind.
Yep. He's out there headbutting lightsabers.
No. So could you not say this was fucking cool, man?
And if you're going to say, oh, something like that shouldn't exist, Beskar exists.
Right. We already have, the MacGuffins, to counter the Jedi. This is just another cool thing about it, and it only disrupts the lightsaber. It literally works a few seconds later.
Yeah.
So it's not that big of a deal, but it's enough time.
Yeah, and it's enough time, because as you saw, he was not holding back on anybody. So if he's in a pinch, which happened a few times, he used either his gauntlet or his helmet to disrupt, and then killed. In one of the scenes he does it, their lightsabers come back on, and he just force pulls them both onto his lightsaber.
That was fucking sick, bro.
Fucking awesome.
That was like something you'd see in a video game.
Yeah.
Like it was so fucking great. I absolutely loved all of the lightsaber combat in this episode. I can't even say enough good things about it. It was better than every fight we saw in the sequel trilogy.
Yes.
Just this episode, the few scenes we got. Anyways, this Sith is just massacring these Jedi. And he fights Yord, slashes Yord's leg, goes to kill him. Osha shoots him for the distraction. While Osha runs for her life, May tries to escape, and I noticed she took Master Kalnaka's lightsaber on her way out. So the Sith throws his lightsaber at Osha until Master Soul saves. And that was the point where, like, because at first when you brought up the Mother Coral conspiracy to me, I was like, yeah, actually, that's what's going to happen, because the Quimir thing is too obvious. The Mother Coral thing kind of makes sense. But once I saw him throw the lightsaber at her, I knew it couldn't be Mother Coral, because why would they be trying to kill her?
Yeah, she wouldn't kill her kid.
So I knew, okay, so this is definitely Quimir, or it's going to be something very unexpected.
Yeah.
And so Soul force pushes Osha away to Yord and tells them to get away. And again, I'm going to keep bringing it up. Another mystery that still isn't as big as where the fuck the Padawan is, but close to it. And this really caught my eye. Was Soul asked the Sith, "Who are you?" And the Sith responds, "You don't remember me," like surprised. And I had the subtitles on because I like to see the little details. And he said, "You ... don't remember me," as in like he's surprised Soul doesn't remember who he is. And Soul responds saying, "I sent something familiar."
Yeah. It's like what? All we know from the past is what happened on their planet, and there was no males there. So is there more to what the Jedi did? Is he another outcome of them going to massacre people that use the Force?
I have a good feeling it is.
Yeah.
Either maybe he was another child they tried to recruit in the past but failed to after slaughtering whatever he was from.
Yeah.
Or there's definitely some strange connection here. And I can't wait to see what it is.
Yeah. Or they could go the route where, Soul was unfaithful to the Jedi and had a kid and then abandoned him and didn't know.
They are both Asian, I think.
I didn't even catch that. I just thought, like...
That kind of caught me by surprise, too.
How else would he be familiar?
That thought did run through my head, but I don't think that's what it is. But I think you're right about it. Him being just another child that lost their loved ones to the Jedi.
Mm-hmm.
That would probably make the most sense.
And that could be why
they would explain
why he felt the connection to them, because the same thing happened to them.
It would also kind of explain why he has such a hatred for the Jedi and why he wants to destroy them morally. Yeah, instead
they didn't if that is the route where they massacred their whole coven, they didn't witness it. He could have witnessed the Jedi wipe out.
Maybe he did.
What was left of their Force users on his planet, or whatever it could be.
Yeah, very well could be the case, and it wouldn't surprise me at all.
No. So was that before or after he asked him? I think that was before he asked him what kind of master hides his face.
He asked him what kind of master hides his face, and he says, what did he say again?
He said, remember. You tell me.
You tell me, right. So, hopefully something's going on here with them. I can't wait to see more of that. They have an awesome battle here, too, just one-on-one. Really fucking good lightsaber action here, like we talked about before. And another really awesome action scene that happens at the same time is Jackie throwing hands with May.
Yeah.
Straight throwing hands. I like seeing Jedi throw hands.
Yeah, because you could use the Force, which they did a great job of that in this show. But, having Jedi use actual fighting is a whole nother aspect. And if it's done right, which it was, it works.
It sure does. And it's, again, cool to see the Force used in different ways while they're fighting. So during the Sith and Souls battle, the Sith suddenly disappears. Same time.
Which how does he do that? He just vanishes.
I don't know, but it's so cool because it reminds me of like Batman just disappearing on everybody.
I captured everybody. They're all tied up. Cops are coming. Cool. I'm out.
And I like seeing that. I like seeing the dark side have these like demonic powers.
Yeah.
It's so cool. I love that. I think we need to see more of like, you know, ghostly style dark side users.
And them having no remorse. Like
that too.
He had no remorse. The double lightsaber kill. Like.
Right. Dude was just hacking and slashing and just didn't give a fuck about anybody.
No.
We'll get more into that here in a second, but we get to a scene where Yord explains that the Sith can get in your head and stay there. And Osha says her mother could do the same. That for a second had me maybe thinking it was Mother Coral again, but then I started thinking about, well, she threw the lightsaber, so maybe it wasn't.
Yeah, she wouldn't try to kill her own kid.
But it does make me question if the Sith does have some sort of connection to the witches somehow, too.
Maybe.
Maybe he was the original child they birthed?
Maybe. Maybe they tried to do it before and they had a son instead of daughters.
Could be. And maybe Jedi took him away too? I'm not sure. But there's obviously some sort of connection here with Quamir and the twins.
Yeah.
And we'll talk a little more about that very soon as well. But Jackie cuffs May and reclaims Master Kalnaka's lightsaber. And this is when the Sith goes one-on-one with Jackie, and our little Padawan Jackie starts whooping some ass.
Yeah.
And she uses both lightsabers after hers gets like disrupted by the Cortosis. She whips out Kalnaka's lightsaber. That was such a raw scene.
It didn't matter, though.
No, it didn't matter. It didn't matter, but it was still a badass scene. But the Sith destroys one of Jackie's lightsabers, does the little Batman disappear again. And at that time, Osha's over there trying to convince Yord they need to go back. Kind of does the little tease of what's going to happen soon, where she tells Yord to turn his lightsaber off so the creatures don't attack him.
Yeah.
That'll play into what happens here up next. But while May is over here apologizing to the Master, the Sith, like, I'm sorry, I shouldn't have done that. I'm a loyal. Says, fuck you, bitch. I'm killing you.
Mm-hmm.
And Sol and Jackie save him, and we get a scene very reminiscent to my favorite lightsaber battle of all time. The Duel of Fates, Obi-Wan, Qui-Gon versus Darth Maul. This was kind of a similar idea of Master and Apprentice fighting the Sith. And then, as you brought up, he has a hidden blade at the bottom of his lightsaber. He pulls out, stabs Jackie 3 times. That was sick as fuck.
Yeah, that wasn't just like, hey, you're gonna die, I'm gonna kill you. That was, you're done.
Absolutely done. And I didn't expect Jackie to die here, but it was like the reverse of Qui-Gon Obi-Wan. Really cool to see. But the Sith kills her in front of Master Sol. And Sol's obviously devastated because he just watched one of his Padawans die.
Yeah.
And before Jackie died, though, she bashed off his helmet. And this is where the big reveal happens that the Sith is none other than Quamir. We finally see it.
Yep.
And he force chokes May, brings him to her, and forces Sol to basically throw away his lightsaber and just try and talk to him. Quamir... So I saw something interesting online, right before we got on here. Quamir has that line where he says, people like you would call me Sith. And everybody's kind of been talking about that. Like, that line's a little ominous because maybe it means he isn't quite a Sith. Maybe it means he's something else. And I just saw from the official Acolyte page, they shared a little biography of Cormier and brought up the fact that he isn't a Sith.
Really?
Or, yeah, it did. I just saw it, like, right before we got on here. It brought up the fact that he is a dark side user, but he didn't confirm if he was a Sith or not, and the official biography calls him an unknown. So, even though it seemed like he was talking about the rule of two and stuff, kind of, maybe he's something else.
Yeah. Or he's just a separate entity like they were saying in the previous episode.
Yeah. There's another thing that we're going to end this on, and I want to know if you caught it. I didn't catch it. I just saw it when I was reading through comments online. But there's something really ominous with him coming up, and we'll talk about that very, very soon. But let's keep talking about the fact that Jordan may come back, and Nord goes to attack Cormier from behind, and this man gets his arm broken and his neck snapped. Like, dude is fucking dead. Yeah, his neck gets fucking snapped, and that's crazy.
Yeah, that was something I never thought I'd see in Star Wars. Minus to, like, droids.
Right, and there was also a scene where OSHA noticed May trying to escape and finally shot her ass.
Yeah.
So, proving that she could have.
Yeah, before. She was capable. Well, maybe it was because, she didn't have a choice.
No, in Cormier's little speech, he says that he has no name, but what he wants is freedom from the Jedi, freedom to use his power independently, and he wants an apprentice, an acolyte, which May failed him.
Yeah.
And I don't know. It's weird to think that the official biography confirmed he isn't necessarily a Sith, but he wants the rule of two thing.
Yeah, which, I mean, I guess doesn't really make sense with him not being one, but...
Yeah. Well, maybe it does.
Yeah.
Master Soul attacks the Sith hand-to-hand, another badass scene, actually beats him, so that shows how powerful Soul is.
Yeah. Which that's really the only glimpse we see. I don't think that's the last battle.
No. And right before he slices Cormier's head off, OSHA stops him and kind of reminds Soul that, like, it's against the Jedi code to kill a defenseless person.
Yeah.
So he stops, and I don't know, I just feel like if you killed him, all this would have been settled.
It would have been done.
So I don't get that thing with good guys not killing bad guys, because the bad guys just go kill more people.
Yeah, but then she does the thing with the flashlight, and those bugs come and attack him and take him away. The only thing I'd like to point out is they're bigger, but the bugs look like the bugs that live on Darth Bane.
Oh, okay. That's cool.
So I thought that was interesting. Obviously, at the end of the episode, we see him, obviously fought him off. So obviously that's not the case, or it could end up being the case. But I thought that was interesting because they're very much bigger. Like the ones that live on him are like, the size of a spider.
That's a nice little detail that I would have never caught. That flashlight also was Pip. I don't know if you realized that.
Yeah, it was part of Pip.
So, yeah, those bugs attack the Sith, and no matter how powerful a Sith is, creatures will always overtake you, no matter what. This is where Soul gets shot by May, because May uses the Force to grab Osha's gun and stun him. And the twins finally have their little reunion. May telling Osha that the Jedi have brainwashed her.
Yeah, it doesn't end well.
Osha doesn't listen. May's like, why aren't you listening? We're family. Osha's like, well, you're fucking killing people. This is all your fault. Like, all of this. And May uses her Force, pushes Osha, and knocks Osha out. I do want to say one thing about this. I really like Amandla Stenberg's performance as May and Osha, but I did think May's dialogue was like a little forced here. It sounded kind of weird. It didn't sound right. If you go back and watch it, you'll see it. This was the one time where I was like, they couldn't get like a better take out of her for that.
Mm-hmm.
It did sound a little forced, but outside of that, she's been incredible. So I'm not really sure what happened in that scene to make the dialogue a little like, I don't know, just cringy forced.
Yeah, and then, after she has that dialogue, you can see her look back at it, and you can tell, like, okay, she's going to switch and become her, which I thought was amazing.
Yeah, that was cool. And I mean, May has to become a fucking barber after how she just cut that hair perfectly. And their sisters,
a Jedi barber,
literally just whipped it out and after that, the Sith gets free, and we see our little they buddy Basil smelling Pip, which is probably going to tie into the next episode, because when Master Soul awakens,
he's going to do his yell and be like, that's not her.
Yeah, this bitch ain't who you think she is.
Yeah.
Master Soul awakens, May pretends to be her sister. He's so disoriented, I don't think he realized anything's going on.
Right.
Obviously, the smell, Basil kind of looks like he don't smell like Osha. Who is she?
Yeah.
That'll probably tie into the next episode. And probably the most intriguing scene happens here at the end, when the Sith finds Osha knocked out, and he specifically says, what extraordinary beings we are. Even in the revelation of our triumph, you see the depth of our despair. It makes me wonder if he is a child of the Force too.
Yeah. Is he a child of the Force, or is he a child of the witches in a mistake?
Mm-hmm. Because he's relating to May and Osha, and he wants them specifically as his acolyte. Now, are we going to see Osha turn to the dark side?
I don't know.
Maybe.
Or is it going to be one of those? I was going to say, or is it one of those things where, like, that's what they're implying, and then, within the next episode or two, like, it kind of just flips back to normal, and then they're both good, and now they just have to go and take out him together.
Could be. That'll probably end up being what happens, because May has shown some signs of being good.
Yeah.
But where was the other thing that I was talking about earlier that I was reading online is people noticed that in that final scene, when he is giving that speech, notes of Kylo Ren's music plays.
Yeah.
And I don't see how this could be the case, but it's an interesting thought. And after seeing the official hosts say that he isn't a Sith, people are wondering if Quamir is the very first Knight of Ren.
Yeah, maybe. I don't like that, but I get it, because they were around back then, or coming up to that time frame they did form.
Because they were in unknown regions or something until Kylo and all that happened. Yeah. But
and then it could explain, like, if he does survive, it could explain how they kind of retcon Ki-Adi-Mundi being in there, because it's like, okay, well, he's not a Sith.
Yeah. And I don't know. They look similar. Like, I was looking at the original Ren's look, and he does look similar. The only thing I think that stops this from maybe being true is that the original Ren was around when Kylo was there.
Yeah.
So I don't know how he could be that old.
Yeah.
Unless he knows the immortality of, like, Plagueis and all that.
Right.
So that'll be something to talk about later. But that was it. That was episodes 1 through 5 of The Acolyte. Mark, do you have any final thoughts you want to share?
If you are one of those people that said negative things about the whole show, and now you're going to talk positive, shut the fuck up. You have no place.
They have no place, because
also
the writing... Oh, yeah.
Also, Disney, can you send the next... How many episodes are there?
I think there's 3 more.
can you just send them directly to me now? That'd be great.
That would be wonderful. I would like to see them and have thoughts on deck for when they come out. The only final thoughts I really have is like the characters have been good. Relationships and backstories have been great. Soul and Osha have been one of the better master-apprentice dynamics. It feels organic. It feels natural.
Yeah.
The actors have all done a stellar job. I think the costumes have been pretty good, too. And I see controversy of people talking shit about the costumes.
There's no
I don't
issue
know.
with those.
The scenery has been beautiful. I love the practical effects. Maybe the alien CGI could be better, but it is a TV show. I'm not going to sit here and be like, this is a, $500 million film. It better be top notch. It's a TV show.
Yeah.
But my biggest critique of the show, I will say, is just that even though I think the plot is good, and even though I've enjoyed the entire show and the storyline and what's going on, I do think that the show hasn't done anything to kind of prove its existence to me yet. Because every plot point has been something we've seen before in Star Wars.
Yeah, it hasn't shown its own identity. I get what you're saying.
No, it hasn't. We have a mysterious master. How many times have we seen that?
Yeah.
We have the Jedi not being as good as you think they are. We've seen that. We have twins. We've seen that. Force children. We've seen that. It's just, I love everything they're doing, and I think they're threading it together very nicely.
Yeah.
But yeah, I that's the only complaint I can really see is people just saying, well, this show's kind of just doing everything I've seen before, just in a different way, but it's stories that we have seen before in Star Wars.
Yeah, so maybe we'll get that in the next 3 episodes, is it getting its own identity.
We still have 3 episodes to go, and it is the most mysterious Star Wars show that we have, or just story, I think, that we have seen. There's always something new around the corner we're waiting to see. And yeah, I've enjoyed the show so far, and I can't understand the hate behind it.
Nope.
Not even one bit. I think it's been one of the better shows Disney has done.
Yeah, it's been over pushed. The hate has, because that sounded like Yoda there. The hate has been like over pushed because it's what's getting people views, and we're going to change that and give people the perspective of what's good and critique what we think is bad. But there hasn't been anything really to critique.
Really, and once the show's over, we'll get more into the constructive criticism aspect of our show. But we kind of dove into that already.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've enjoyed the show a lot so far. I don't get the haters. And damn it, I just want to know, where the fuck is the Padawan?
Yes.
If that isn't revealed by the end of the show, I'm writing shit. That's all I have to say.
Yeah, let's leave it. That is the last open-ended question, is where the fuck is she?
All right, well, that is our thoughts and discussion and like mini review of the Acolyte so far. We hope you enjoyed our first episode. This is our very first episode, so it probably wasn't perfect. No. I'm sure there's things we could do better. As we do it, I'm sure we will get better, though, because I think we're both quick to adapt.
Yeah, we'll definitely get better.
Yeah, for sure. We'll get a lot better with the editing and just everything, discussion, but we had a good time.
Yeah.
So we'll be back in 3 weeks to discuss the rest of this series and give our overall final thoughts, criticisms, review of the Acolyte in full. I just want to real quick plug our social medias. You can find us at FireTruth Cast on X, where you can give us constructive criticism back on our show and what you would want to see more of or what we could have done differently. We also can be found at FireTruthCast on YouTube.com, on Spotify, and on Apple. Next week, we'll be talking about X-Men 97, which is a full show that is done. So we can give more constructive criticism if we even have to on the show. So I think it's been pretty good so far.
Yeah.
And, right. And Mark, you had a little plug you wanted to do for the very end here?
Yeah, so, if you're following us and you like Star Wars, but you also like UFC, there is a podcast called Combat Coverage, which you can go follow. They have, I believe, 2 episodes out. They're going to be doing their episodes as every UFC event happens. Not every UFC, but every UFC fight happens. They'll give you the breakdown of who they think is going to win, who they're going to bet on. So if you want to make some money, they're pretty spot on with their bets. So.
And that is our friends Austin and Anthony at Combat Coverage Pod. And when you go over there to check out their great show, go ahead and ask my buddy Austin about Starry Night. You won't be disappointed. Other than that, we will be back next week with X-Men 97, a full review, critical perspective on that. And in a few weeks, we'll be back to finish the Acolyte episodes 6 through 8. So we hope you enjoyed the show. We hope you come back to listen to more. And we hope you want to get some more FireTruth dropped on you. So again, we'll see you later. And I hope to see you all again and another time in a galaxy far, far away.